2021.
Make a motion to accept. Second as read.
We have a motion and a second to accept the payroll, the warrant and the payroll register as read. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Let's see, we have a pole permit for Central Main Power on the Russell Road.
Yep, this is a pretty standard order. I've had the road commissioner check it out. They're replacing 6 poles along Russell Road. You probably noticed quite a bit of activity around with pole replacements. Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Central Main Power pole permit for the Russell Road. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Under consent agenda, we need a motion for a quitclaim deed for Margaret Inman at 60 Maple Street, and it is map 21, lot 22. All paid up, everything's...
So what Mr. Vinziano has there is 3 quitclaim deeds. The foreclosure date for taxes, unpaid 2018 taxes, was last Tuesday. Between that then and now, these individuals have come and made their accounts whole. They brought them up to speed, and so I'm recommending that the board quitclaim deed them back.
Okay, so let's take the first one. Need a motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to give a quitclaim deed to Margaret Inman, map 21, lot 22. Any questions? Mr. Savage?
Tim, when you say up to speed, is that from 2018 or is that actually to date?
Just the 2018s in all these cases.
All right, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. We have our second one for Stephen D. and Rebecca L. Withy, 189 Preble Avenue.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve quitclaim deed for Stephen D. and Rebecca L. Withy at 189 Preble Avenue. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. And we have our third one for Jessica Van Rooten at 49 Hidden Acres Drive.
Make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. All right, acceptance of the meeting minutes from February 8, 2021.
Move to accept.
A motion and a second to accept the meeting minutes from February 8, 2021. All those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Old business, Mr. Gopian?
None.
Mr. Moody?
None, sir.
Mrs. Dwyer? Mr.
None
Savage?
for me.
Okay. Items of communication, Mr. Town Manager?
Just a couple small things to pass along to you. In your packets, you should have received a draft for commercial hauler's license. That's an updated draft. It keeps the fee the same at $250. But based on our last couple of meetings, I did add a paragraph in there that would require a hauler, if they have a customer that has a separate cardboard container, that they process that cardboard separately so that the town gets the proper credit for it if it's taken to waste management. So that that won't go into effect until July 1st, but I did want to just have the board see what the update would look like. Along the lines of recycling, I did speak with the code enforcement officer in Skowhegan, who also operates Skowhegan's transfer station. And as you probably remember in some of our past meetings, it was brought up that the town of Madison should consider taking their recyclables to Skowhegan rather than the waste management. And that's become painfully clear now since our cost at waste management has gone up again for recyclables. Skowhegan will take them at no charge if we sort them. And Skowhegan is actually excited about taking our recyclables, especially our glass and our paper and cardboard and plastic, because they are trying to get a grant. And if they see towns collaborating together on recycling, it's a good thing. So we kind of have the green light to encourage our residents to take theirs to Skowhegan and encourage our haulers that collect sorted recyclables to be able to take those to Skowhegan. It's a good thing. And there's more conversations that Brian and I will have. Brian's the code officer that took over for Randy Gray, who had been there for many, many years in Skowhegan.
I just have a quick question. So residents can take their, without, do they have to have a slip or something?
Right. Any resident from Madison can take their sorted recycling. So you can't take it all in one bin. It's got to be separated glass, plastic, so forth. And at Skowhegan's transfer station, they have all the bins. So. And the only thing that I will...
How do we get the notice out to the people about this?
That seems to be a recurring theme every time we talk about something. We'll put it in the town report, we'll put it in the letters that go home with the taxes, we'll talk about it on Channel 11, we'll do the best that we can. This is, Mr. Savage, this is the poll permit for CMP, if you could just sign that and work that way. The last thing I'll add is I will be on vacation from March 1st to March 15th. I will be traveling out of state, so I'll be taking all the necessary COVID precautions and testing and quarantining and so forth. So I will be in touch with Mr. Vinziano as to when the next select board meeting will be. Right now it's tentatively scheduled for the 15th of March, and we'll see how that works out based on my travel and quarantining and so forth. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Okay, new business. I'd like to open the caucus to elect local representation of the Somerset County Budget Committee, and I'd like to welcome our Somerset County Commissioner, Chip Johnson, with us today. Looking for a nomination, I believe.
So just to clarify for everybody in the room, every elected official in Madison is part of the caucus for Somerset County. So there are 6 people here tonight that are signed up as caucus members that can vote to nominate a budget member. I've been on the budget committee for the last 4 years. They're 2-year terms. I would like to continue. So all I need from one of the 5 of you or from Jeff is a nomination to put me back on the budget committee.
So,
I'll second it. All right, so we have a motion and a second to elect Tim Curtis to the Somerset County Budget Committee. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Seeing none, we will take a vote. All those in favor? All in favor? Yes, in favor, so we have 6-0.
Perfect.
All right, congratulations, Tim.
Yeah,
Good luck.
that's all the business that Mr. Johnson came for.
Sip, anything else? Nothing? No words of wisdom? Okay.
A very valuable member of the budget committee, though.
Oh, good. All right, number 2, discuss updates of the policy on internal controls.
So this was introduced to the select board at the last meeting. We had updated some of the things that needed to be updated in this policy. It is a town policy, which is why it comes before you. Just as a refresher, the things that the Bureau of Motor Vehicles asked us to include in this policy, so we have it in writing, is that those clerks that work the counter will do their best not to register a vehicle that belongs to a family member, and that town employees will not register their own vehicles. This has not been an issue that's resulted in a lot of problems over the past. It's just one of those things when BMV sees, when they do their audit, and they see the last name of the person that did the registration matches the last name of the person that received the registration, it's a red flag. BMV understands that not every town is able to do this, and there may be certain situations where we don't have somebody that we're not related to. So, but what BMV asked is that we update our policy, and so we thought it was a good idea. We started looking at this policy. It hadn't been updated since 2010, and so we made the necessary adjustments to it and are coming to you for action to update it.
Okay, looking for a motion to accept the internal controls update.
Is that the only updates in this policy?
I updated a couple of numbers. In the second paragraph, it said that each year the town of Madison collects over $750,000 in excise tax. The previous draft said $600,000, but we do a considerable amount more than that. Those 2 bullet points were added. Everything else, other than the names on the last page, is pretty much the same as it's been for over 10 years.
I'll make a motion to accept.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept internal controls update to the personnel policy? No.
Internal controls policy.
Internal controls policy, sorry. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. All right, number 3, discuss budget considerations for fiscal year 22.
First of all, I'd like to thank the members of the Budget Advisory Committee that have attended in person and attended via Zoom tonight. In your packets, you should have received about 3 pages in a Word document. As I've tried to explain, I don't feel it's necessary to go through the line-by-line 13-page budget tonight. I just want to hit the highlights to see if you've got questions or concerns. I'll start out of the gate by saying that I believe that this budget, with all the things that we're adding to it and the money that we're recommending to take out of undesignated fund balance, will bring us in flat, so that we will not be going to the taxpayers asking for more than what we did last year in the net. So I'll start out with that, which I believe is good news. The other thing I'll mention is that all of the departments, I've met with fire, highway, admin, recreation, library. All of those department budgets are within 1% or 2% of where they were last year. So there's no steep increases in each of the department budgets, and that's commendable to them. So on this sheet, I'll just touch on revenues. If you remember, if you were with us last year during the budget conversations that we had in May, because everything had been pushed back to July instead of June due to COVID, there was still a lot of concern out there about what revenues would look like. Would people not be able to pay their taxes? Would people not buy new vehicles or register new vehicles? If you remember at that time, the governor had said, you don't have to register your vehicle. You can drive on dead plates for a while. And so everybody was kind of confused as to how this is all going to work out. Then we had the issue of revenue sharing. If Maine loses all this revenue because people can't come in here for tourism, does that mean the state will be able to pay what they promised to pay to the towns in revenue sharing? And then there was also questions about state aid to education and all of that. So the good news is now here, 8-9 months later, we're able to breathe a little easier because people have continued to buy cars. People have actually paid their taxes ahead of pace where we were last year. And that's not just in Madison. Most towns are reporting that people have paid their taxes ahead. There's less people that are behind in taxes, property taxes, than there were a year ago. And because of the excise tax running ahead of what we anticipated, we're going to have an above average year in revenues, I anticipate. On that sheet there, I said on an average year, the town takes in about $1,032,000. Right now, we're on track to take in about $1,075,000 with 3-4 months to go. So I'm pleased to report that our revenues are where they should be, if not a little bit better. And that puts us in a position that I think we can budget more confidently. So now, anybody have any questions about revenues? Okay. The second part of that page is budget increases. You have a question?
No. I think I have new.
So the budget increases, you see the categories, and I will touch on these briefly. Code enforcement, I keep going back and forth on whether or not the town needs to have a full-time code officer. We have never budgeted for a full-time code officer, and so that budget item for code has always been around $25,000 to $30,000. If we're, and the other thing is we haven't been able to find one. We haven't been able to find a committed part-time code officer. We continue to use Leo Mayo out of Emden to cover us, but I try not to lean on him too much. So I've taken some of the brunt, and if I have questions that I can't answer, I go to Dave Savage and he tries to help me out with those things. That can only be a temporary fix. That can't be our long-term solution for code enforcement. We have to have somebody in that position that's either part-time and willing and able to do it part-time, or if we can't find a part-time person, we need to maybe step up our budget to a full-time. So what I've built in for code enforcement this year is about $75,000, so that's significantly higher than the $30,000, 25 to 30 that we budgeted in the past. And so that includes a salary and benefits for a code officer. It also includes mileage. It also includes setting aside about $6,000 for our contracted planner. Just so everybody knows, we contract with Kennebec Valley Council of Governments, and they provide a planner that meets with our planning board, and that has worked really well this year. In the past, we used to rely on our code officer to be kind of the planner with the planning board, and that didn't work so well. And so this has worked well. Now, if we're able to find a code officer that's able to do the planning and do all those things, that would be great. But much like many other towns in Maine, we struggle to find a code officer.
Is this full-time person out there?
I'm not giving this to you with anybody in mind.
No, but I'm just saying,
So-
is it possible to find a full-time person?
I think it is. And based on my experience trying to hire part-time people, I think at the very least we need to step up the amount of money that we're willing to pay. So even if that person is going to do it part-time, we've been paying $18, $19 an hour, and most people just laugh. If they're even remotely qualified, they're not interested in doing it for that. So, any other questions on code officer?
So I guess if that's something we're looking to do, step up the money, maybe we should look at it that way too. And find, I mean, what is a reasonable rate? I mean, is a reasonable rate 25 or 30 or?
If there was only a code officer in this room. But I hesitate to ask him because I don't want to hear the number he's going to say.
I'll ask you.
That's not reasonable either.
What do you think a part-time 20-hour-a-week hourly wage should be?
I don't know, there's no good answer. The toughest part with part-time is most towns this size are looking for 20, 25 hours a week. And most people need a full-time job. So that's kind of where you're running into it. I have two small towns that I do on the side of my full-time job. And it's random hours. It's in that price range. The unique thing is the hours are limited, so I can make that work with my full-time schedule. But if I had them two part-time jobs and I made what they pay me, I wouldn't do it. I'd go find a full-time job.
Maybe, yeah.
Then what is a full-time hourly wage, Steve? Or salary, whatever?
I've seen it as low as 40, and I've seen it as high as 75.
Okay. So it's up to the experienced individual, what they think they're worth, is that what you're saying?
And what's expected of them.
Yeah, okay.
And I mean, everyone here knows Madison's a town that enforces the building code. Just anybody can't go do the job. I mean, you need certifications from the state. And once you get them, there's towns, Tim could probably speak on this better than me, there's towns that, two towns side by side have tried to employ one full-time person. It worked for a short time and then someone grabbed it. It's just the nature of the beast. There's not a lot out there.
Do you think we could find someone?
I think if it was a full-time position, it'd be a lot easier. Like I said, someone's got to dedicate their week to, right now, 20 to 25 hours a week, which is difficult to live on. The two part-time jobs I have, I picked them up to help them out 2 years ago because they had a contracted deal that went bad. And 2 years later, I'm still there, unfortunately. If someone else would want them, they could have them.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Any other thoughts or comments on code officer while we're there?
So what, are you waiting for us to chum you?
I got enough work, Ron. I can teach you how to do it, though. You said you were looking for work as a retired guy.
Excuse me, you heard wrong.
Those masks.
You know, when you have a rarity, then it becomes competition. So in this case, competition is money,
It is.
because that's how we lost the last one.
Right.
It came down to hours and money.
Absolutely. It's a lot like the police world, the EMS world, the fire world, is the next town home is gonna pay you more money.
Yeah.
They're gonna go, it's the same job.
Because they're a rare commodity.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes.
Town manager, let's continue.
All right, next item on the list is elections, and it's not any secret that elections are very different now than they used to be. Many years ago, we could do an election in June, an election in November, and even throw in maybe a school budget election, and it would cost us $4,000. That's when minimum wage was $7 an hour. You have to pay your election clerk's minimum wage, and so now that's significantly higher. With absentee balloting, you don't have an election day anymore. You have an election season, you have an election month. Somebody's got to be available to process those absentee ballots or allow people to come and vote in person absentee. We've changed the location. You are now sitting in election headquarters. And so when we hold our June election, vote for school board, selectmen, and so forth, when we hold that June election, it's not at the town office, it's here. When we hold the November election, it's not at the town office anymore, it's here. This allows us to have the space where we can properly socially distant, and even if COVID doesn't become an issue anymore, we just did not have the space at the town office to conduct in-person absentees. So you'll see in your budget packets that it used to be $4,000 is what we budgeted for elections. Now last year was crazy, but last year we spent over $15,000 just on elections. Not the renovations to this room, not the parking lot, all that other stuff set aside. We spent $15,000 just to have enough people to staff the elections. And we're not done yet. We still have a June election that will go into this year's budget because the budget won't close till June 30th. So Kathy and I talked, and you know, we're spitballing it here, but we're assuming that $10,000 is what we're going to have to spend to cover our elections for the new fiscal year. When we get to another presidential, it may have to go up to $15,000 just because of the number of people you're trying to process. So that is another significant change in the budget. Any questions about the election budget? All right. Next category is public utilities. We've talked quite a bit about tipping fees and waste management. I just have not been budgeting enough to keep up with the increase in tonnage and fees at the front gate. So we're going to continue to pay the front gate fees. So I'm recommending that we add about $30,000 to our budget to increase our total waste management costs from $225 up to $255. That $255 covers both the front gate and the back gate. In addition, under public utilities, we keep going back and forth with the sanitary district in regards to storm drains, and I'm not sure if Mr. Hagopian has anything to add here, but last year we set aside $25,000. This year I'm setting aside $50,000. And really that's just to pay the maintenance on the storm drain system. As far as our understanding between the road commissioner, myself, and sanitary, they're not planning on doing any significant work this year. If they did, we would do our part for the storm drains under capital. So this line item here simply pays for the maintenance for the storm drains. So any thoughts or comments on that?
How did it double?
We have 2 bills to pay, and I wanted to pay 2 bills. It's really, this number is a guesstimate. And so when they do the storm drain cleanings, it costs anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000. Plus they might have to go repair a storm drain or something like that. So I think the bill that we paid for last year was around $21,000. We've got another bill that they're waiting for us to get into this budget to give us, and that's about another $22,000, $23,000. Plus, at the end of the fiscal year, we imagine we'll have another bill for around $20,000 to $25,000.
Okay.
So any other questions or thoughts on the public utilities? Cemetery costs, I mean, this is not a significant increase, but it is an increase. Before we get to the budget in April, before we get to that meeting, I'm going to ask Kathy to get the interest earnings on our perpetual care account. Because if you remember a few years ago, we varied budgets so they would match with what the ordinance actually says. And the ordinance says that the selectmen get the interest, or at least get that number, and that's used to offset the cost of mowing Forest Hills. Because that's what the perpetual care account is for, is to maintain Forest Hills. So that's our biggest expense in cemeteries. So we're running a little bit behind on that this year, so I recommended a 10% increase, but that may change once we get those interest numbers from the perpetual care account. On the second page, just a little bit about community services. The People Who Care food cupboard, I think most everybody's aware they no longer use this building. So when they went out, they told us that they would ask for a little bit more in lieu of them not being in this building, and so their request went from $14,500 to $15,500. I talked to Tim Haynes, who's on their board, and his church is the one that's leasing them the property over at Lakewood Road, and that seems to be going well. There's no indication from anyone with the People Who Care food cupboard that they want to come back and use this facility again. And I think it was great to be able to service people from here, but this facility was just not built for that. There's no handicap access downstairs, and we have saved probably $1,000 in electricity and probably $500 to $1,000 in heating oil by not having something operating downstairs here. So it's a
You said 15.5. Is it 15 or?
It's 15. It's 15.5. Somebody brought that to my attention earlier.
Okay.
That's my mistake on your handout. So it is 15.5. General assistance. Boy, it's been hit or miss, but this year was hard. We're going to run over that $15,000 budget this year for general assistance. I recommend increasing it to 17.5. Just keep in mind that the state does reimburse you 80% back. But the state is notoriously late on that, and so we have to front the money for folks that qualify for GA up front. And this board may remember that Lakewood Theater, they used to get an automatic grant from TIF, but this board moved that to go to town meeting and ask for it. So we've added that to our community programs for a $5,000 donation under community programs for Lakewood Theater. So. Any questions, thoughts, comments? So with all of that, the non-capital budget is up about $95,000 or about 3%. Now, the majority of that is code enforcement, elections, waste management. So that's pretty much where you can narrow down those cost increases. We did see some savings. I didn't highlight them here. The AMS Ambulance Board voted to reduce their fees to municipalities. So we saved about $15,000 from AMS because they went down. The police budget, I met with the sheriff and Pat Dolan from Somerset County. The police budget went down about $30,000. So our contribution to that will go down about $15,000 or $20,000 for this coming year. So it's a good thing. So those offset some of these increases. So before we dive into capital, any questions on what we've covered so far? All right. So capital, if you remember the story from last year, the department heads presented capital, but because we didn't know where we were going to be with revenue, we cut back on what they requested, and we didn't bring any money from fund balance, just because of all the unknowns. So this year, we are trying to kind of go back to recapture some of those things. Jeff is here to speak to some of the highway equipment purchases. It's a little complicated, but Jeff is asking to set aside $185,000, and that will cover a new sidewalk plow. Now that new sidewalk plow will replace two pieces of old equipment. It will replace the current sidewalk plow and the current skid steer, because the piece of equipment that Jeff is looking at has enough attachments to be able to be multifaceted and do more than one thing. That's about $85,000. We'd also like to put about $100,000 toward a new plow truck, which is a wheeler truck. And some people know what that is, I don't know. I guess it's got more wheels than other trucks. But, and so those are the two pieces that Jeff is looking for funding. The other thing that we'll just throw out so that you're aware of it, we have some money left over that we didn't spend this year for highway equipment. Some of that money is dedicated towards a new plow truck, a new wheeler. But a new situation that we thought we could get by with has come up with the 1-ton truck, which is the red pickup with the dump body that you see plow the parking lots, and they plow out to behind Rennie's and they plow out on Naomi Avenue with it. Basically it's a big pickup truck. We thought we could get by another year or two with it, but it has a cracked frame, and we have patched it up for this year, but we're recommending to replace that. So Jeff is getting some quotes now, and what we're trying to do is to see if we can use some of the money that we have left over that we haven't spent this year to go towards replacing that 1-ton with a plow and a sander and all the things that go with it.
Mooney.
You're not really looking to lease something, are you, Jeff?
Not at this time, no, Ron. No.
I don't think you're gonna get my support if you start leasing something like this. But as far as these items, hadn't we set money aside towards these items already in capital? I know we cut him hard last year because of the unanticipated.
Last year, I think you asked for a little bit over 150,000. That was cut back to 105,000.
Right.
25 of that was to go toward a plow truck, and the other 80 was to pay for what was raised the year before for a bucket loader. And so if you remember, you saw the bids on the JCB bucket loader that we purchased.
Okay, I understand that. But with what he needs now, what do we have in reserve, and what do we have to make up to get him what he needs?
So we have $25,000 that we set aside for the plow truck. That's in reserve.
Okay.
And we have $55,000 that is left over from other purchases that we got for less. So you put those two together, we have about $80,000 that we haven't spent yet this year.
Okay.
That money, Jeff and Tammy and I have talked about, could go towards replacing the 1-ton. And if you do that within this fiscal year, then you're talking about raising $185,000 for a new sidewalk plow, and to again put more money aside to the wheeler, the plow truck. If we didn't have a cracked frame on the 1-ton, and we thought we could get through another year or two with the 1-ton, we would have enough money with this $185,000 to order the new wheeler now. But what Jeff's faced with is, which one do I prioritize? And he wants to prioritize the 1-ton, and I agree, and maybe put the wheeler purchase off for another year.
Okay.
Jeff, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's pretty much that nutshell, Tim.
So any other questions on highway equipment? And again, I commend Jeff and Tammy. They've put together a pretty useful list of capital equipment. And so we know what we need to replace, what's coming up on the list. And that one time just kind of jumped a little bit.
The total price for the wheeler is what, Jeff?
I haven't gotten a bid on it, but it'll probably run close to 185 to 190 by next year, I'm sure. The price of steel, I was told last week, is going to be going up 30% across the board. 30% on trucks. Anything with metal, it's going to go up 30%.
So if you look at that 185, and then the other sidewalk plow is 85, correct?
Correct.
So I guess the thinking is, if we were able to get this amount this year at town meeting, we'd come back asking for another 75 to 100 to finish the wheeler purchase. And then we'd be kind of up to date.
So on the trucks that you have that are plowing the roads, I'm assuming this wheeler will do that.
Yes.
I'm probably second behind Tim and not knowing what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, that will just replace
That
one
will
of the
replace
oldest.
the
That will
trucks.
replace one
What's-
of the oldest trucks
What
that
are
we
we
have.
trying to replace?
Pardon?
What are we trying to replace?
Another truck just like that.
What year?
It's a I think it's 2002.
2002. Okay, so 2002 is going to make it another year or two?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So while we're in highway still, these are the recommended road paving projects for this coming year, to the tune of about $215,000. Ames Hill and Orchard Road, Preble Avenue from Schuster to Ward Hill, which will complete Preble Avenue. So those projects there should total up to about $215,000. Now Golf Course Road and Russell Road, they will be started with TIF funds. So that's not something that will necessarily go to the town meeting, but it is something that Jeff and I have talked about setting aside TIF funds for. There's also a small portion of River Road that needs to be finished out past Lloyd's Pit, but Jeff is working on getting the details of that work.
Moody, sorry.
What are we doing with Naomi Avenue?
We have some money left over from last year's pavement projects. Plan on right now is overlaying that this spring.
The reason I'm asking, I've asked this for the last 2 or 3 years. And as far as this town, we have sections of dirt road that is smoother than that tarred piece of road that goes in there. And there are quite a few residents that live down there. And the worst part is from 201 to that first sharp corner. Beyond that sharp corner, the road's pretty good shape. But it's that first stretch right there.
Are you referring to Hayden Street?
No, you go past Hayden Street and you've got that real sharp corner with the stop sign.
Onto Naomi from Hayden?
When you go in there, you have to pitch down a hill to hit that corner. I'm saying to that corner
Yeah.
there. We'd be better off, I mean, if I lived there, I'd rather see you tear it up and just leave it dirt, because it's gonna be a heck of a lot smoother than what it is. Right now, you've gotta make sure you get your seatbelt on at 5 miles an hour. But as long as it's getting some attention, a little bit, as long as we can show those people they're getting something, as far as attention goes. Thank you.
So I know Jeff and I talked about unused funds that are left over that we would plan to use this spring before the end of the fiscal year. And I think that part of town is going to be looked at.
Okay.
Any other questions on paving? If not. Fire equipment. Donnie is asking that we set aside $150,000 to replace to go toward replacing the 1990 tanker truck. So, if you've ever served on the fire department, you know what beast we're talking about. This is a 1990 tanker truck that is a manual transmission, full-size fire truck. True mileage is unknown because the odometer is broken, and a steel tank that they don't make anymore that leaks. It is the oldest fire truck that we have. Based on a survey of the area, it is the oldest fire truck in Madison, Norwalk, Skowhegan, and Anson. We have tried for 4 years in a row to write a FEMA grant to replace this truck, and we have not been able to get to the finish line with that grant because there are so many other communities across the country that are in the same boat that are asking for funds for a fire truck. So what Donnie and I talked about is we just put in another application for a FEMA grant. We asked for $300,000 because a new tanker truck is going to be $340 to $360, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we've asked for $300,000 in this grant because Donnie still has $50,000 left over from last year that was set aside for a fire truck. But what you run into is if you only set aside $50,000 every year for a $350,000 truck, by the time you get it replaced, your next oldest one is out of service and it needs to be replaced right on top of it. So Donnie and I decided to ask for $150, add that to the $50 that we have, and now Donnie can start planning and building a truck so that he knows exactly what he needs next town meeting to ask for this to be complete. Now, in the 1% chance that we get this $300,000 grant, that would be great. If we do get it, we still need to be setting aside money for fire truck replacements, especially if we lose the rescue vehicle, the 1997 rescue vehicle that is used by AMS. And so if Madison had to put their portion up to replace that rescue vehicle, this money could certainly go towards that. So that's our recommendation on fire equipment for this year. Any questions or comments? All right. The last thing I wanted to touch on, and I brought this to the selectmen for other people who might be hearing about it for the first time. There are 55 street lights in East Madison that are owned by CMP. CMP has offered to replace them with LEDs, but if CMP goes out and does the replacement, they want you to guarantee that you're not going to go anywhere else for the next 15 years. You're locked into paying for these LEDs over 15 years. We have the option, if we were to raise the money, to buy these 55 streetlights so that the town of Madison would own them. And then we could do the upgrades to LEDs, we'd save the money. And then we could have them serviced by a third-party contractor. And one of those contractors could be Madison Electric. So it seems to be a pretty good idea. Because CMP charges very high monthly rates, if we owned them, we would only be charged for the electricity that the lights use. We would not be charged the pole rate that CMP charges, and that would save us somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $7,000 a month. So the $30,000 that I'm recommending for capital to buy and replace the street lights, $12,500 of that would go to CMP to buy the lights, and then the remainder would be used to purchase new LEDs, and so that the lights that we have will be, much more efficient and use less money. So that is an idea that I'd like to bring to you and like to bring to the town meeting if you think that's a good idea.
Mr. Gopi.
Just one thing, so CMP's going, if something happens to them, goes out or something, CMP's going to come out and fix them?
Once we buy them?
Yeah.
No.
No, who's going to, we haven't got a contractor?
We would have, in order for CMP to sell them to us, we have to list who the contractor is.
Okay.
So that contractor would be MEW, or the contractor would be On Target, or the contractor would be anybody that's qualified to do that. And I have gotten quotes from On Target and MEW as to what that would cost, and it would be less than the $30,000 to do the replacements and to be on call to fix it.
Yeah, the main thing is in slippery weather, if a car hits them, knocks them all.
And also, this will give us an opportunity to look at our inventory of streetlights. A large majority of these streetlights are in East Madison, and the Lower Mills Road goes all the way out to Cornville. And there's a street light on every pole all the way out there to Cornville, even though there's nothing out there. And so this gives us an opportunity to look and say, okay, do we need all these street lights out here? And talk to the residents and say, do you think that, we need it, or can we do without it, or that sort of thing. So any other thoughts on this? Is this something that you think that we should pursue? And I'm recommending it, so.
Take it to the next meeting. We want to wait for the budget.
We can certainly add it to the next meeting, but you're going to be on budget pretty soon after that.
All right.
And so the last thing I just bring up is undesignated fund balance. So last year, we chose not to bring any money forward. 2 years ago, we brought forward $400,000 to offset taxes or to help pay for capital, either way you look at it. So because we brought $400,000 back 2 years ago, I wanted to see how our financials ended. And even though we did that, our fund balance, our undesignated fund balance actually went up a little bit. So that was a good thing. That means that it didn't deplete our fund balance by bringing that $400,000 2 years ago. So that, plus we didn't do any last year, means we're going to have a little bit of surplus coming into this budget year. So I've talked about it with Tammy. I'm on the high end at $400,000, but I think that that is something that we could do to help get all these capital projects going and not raise taxes for the taxpayer. So that's the budget in a nutshell right now.
Any other questions for the town manager? Obviously, we'll be back to this in April or...
So just so you know, again, we'll work out the schedule when I return, but the last select board meeting in March will probably be the 29th of March. I will present the budget to the select board at that meeting, and so they can have their say on anything there. Then on Wednesday, April 7th, is when the advisory board and the select board will meet, and we'll go through the whole thing and get that budget done.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the advisory board for coming. Any questions, anybody? All right, we'll move on. Number 4, discuss tax acquired property.
All right, in your packet, you have a list of 7 properties. I'm pleased to say that as of this afternoon, we're down to 5 properties. So on your packet, you can knock number 1 off and number 7 off. If those were paid today.
Number 1 and 7?
Yeah, the first one and the last one, with the end of road. Those have been paid. So, if you don't mind, I'll go through each one of these, because each one of these has a different story. And so, if you like stories, you'll like this. Now, as assessors, we've already talked a little bit about 283 White Schoolhouse Road. That person has had some difficulties, medical bills and so forth, and they're in the process of making payments. And I don't see any reason why we would not try to work with them and continue to make payments. I believe he can probably be caught up within 2 months. And so I'm going to recommend that we just kind of stay the course with that one, allow him to get caught up. The next one is a tricky one. This is the one that's over at 15 Hidden Acres Drive. The gentleman's name is Ernest Brown. He has owned this trailer for 2 or 3 years. The previous owner was CJK Realty, which is the company that owns all the land in Hidden Acres. Everybody knows where Hidden Acres is, Madison Street, out and around behind there, Jones Street. So CJK Realty owns all the land there. They used to own this trailer. Mr. Brown bought it from them. And unfortunately, he's not paid taxes on it. His situation, I don't know, because I've been talking with his father. His father has moved back in with him to try to help him. But frankly, he hasn't paid his taxes, he hasn't paid his light bill, sewer bill, electric bill, and he hasn't paid Hidden Acres their rent fee. So everybody's got a piece of this situation here. I've been talking with CJK Realty to see if they would be willing to pay all the taxes, but in that case, they would want the trailer. That would give them the leverage. So I bring this one to you. I need to get a little bit more information about what's going to happen. The father has promised me that he's going to pay off all the 2018 taxes this week. I still have to talk to CJK Realty because it's a little tricky. CJK Realty still has an interest, and they were the one that we liened because they were the owner in 2018. So if Mr. Brown pays off the 18s, who do we quit claim deed it back to? Do we give it to Mr. Brown or do we give it to CJK Realty? So I got to do a little more research on that. The third one on the list, out on the 1162 Lakewood Road. So the situation there is Cindy Young, who is listed as the owner. She inherited this from her mother back in 2012. And since she inherited it from her mother, she has always been behind on her taxes. And always said that she'll pay them, but unfortunately she's never been able to do so on time, and now she's completely in foreclosure. If you've ever been out there, you know that this is a pretty messy area. There's a lot of junk on this property. The trailer that's on there is not safe. So let me add another layer to this. A year ago, Cindy moved out. She no longer lives here. We had to take her homestead exemption off because we knew she wasn't living there. And she's rented the trailer. I've been in contact with the woman that's living in this trailer now, and she assures me that she's been paying $500 a month right along for the last year. So I asked Cindy about that. I said, look, you've been having an income. How come you haven't been able to pay your taxes? And I don't get a good answer. Hold on. There's a third party involved because Cindy's brother, who lives in Clinton, he is also on the deed to this property. And he called me today, and he said that he would like to pay all the back taxes and clean up the property if the town will deed it simply back to him and not put Cindy's name on it, which you have the authority to do. Once it's been foreclosed on, you as selectmen have the authority to deed it back to whoever pays it. So we have Cindy, who doesn't live there, who's been responsible for the taxes but hasn't paid them. We have a woman named Stephanie who lives there, who's not interested in buying it, but just needs to know what we're going to do because she needs to find another place to live. We have Leslie Witham, who's the brother, who's interested in paying all the back taxes and cleaning it up. But wait, there's more. Many of you know Randy Bruce, who operates an automotive center over in Skowhegan. He's the neighbor. And he has asked if he could buy the property, pay all the back taxes, and clean it up. So, here's where I'm at with this. Because Mr. Witham's name is on the deed, I'm inclined to give him the first opportunity to pay all the back taxes, a little over $3,000. That way the property stays in his name and his family's name. But I would also want him to sign an agreement that outlines clearly everything on this property must go. The trailer's got to get out of there, all the junk, all the cars, all the stuff. He's got to clean it all up. So that's kind of my first inclination, is to work with the brother who's in Clinton. So, what are your thoughts?
What kind of time frame you going to give them to clean this mess up?
I would probably give it 60, 90 days, depending on the weather.
Yep.
Do you think he has the ability to do it?
He tells me he has the ability, and Randy Bruce knows this guy. So I think I can kind of circle back to Randy and say, what do you think? Do you think if this guy says he's going to do it, he'll do it? Try to feel that out in that way. And also, I'm going to go over there, and I'll probably enlist a code officer that I know to go with me, and just kind of walk through the property and say, this has gotta go, this has gotta go, this has gotta go. So. Is it?
No, it's a 7.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this clearly. We technically own this property. the
We
town.
do. All these on this list are owned by the town of Madison right
Is, from the last meeting, as good as the real estate market is there any reason we don't get rid of them that way?
now. Just put them up for sale?
I mean, I just see what kind of mess are we creating, taking it from this girl to give to the brother to clean. I personally don't like it, but I understand where we're coming from. And if stuff's selling so good and we're going to sell it anyway, let's sell it.
So we haven't passed on to auction.
Yep.
I mean, I don't, you know, and when we haven't gone to auction, we've got ourselves in trouble. So I don't know, picking Randy over Les or Les over Randy is gonna be, I don't know if that's gonna be in our best interest. But, so I think either what Dave's saying or to get the auction going again. You know, we did fairly well with that last time we done it.
We did. The first 4 of these properties are all mobile homes. And mobile homes that are not in the best of shape. So I don't think that they necessarily qualify as hot real estate at this point. That's my take on it. Now, if we did go this route and wanted to list this or sell it at auction, I would say that it would be in the town's best interest to evict the people that are living there and clear off everything off this property and just sell the land. It's in that bad of shape. So I invite you to come with me and we can take a look at it and you can give me your opinion. The land is worth more with everything gone.
So if you said we're gonna sell for less, and we put in it that you gotta clean it up, what happens if he doesn't clean it up?
Right, then we go in and clean it up and put a lien on his taxes like we did with.
We're right back to where we started from.
So, you're right, the fastest way to do this and the way to do is while the town owns it, clean it up. But that's on the taxpayers' dime.
Yeah.
If we have 2 people that have said, we'll clean it up if you sell it to us, then that's on their dime. So,
How big is that? How big is it?
it's about 1.25 acres, so it's more than an acre of land. All right,
Let's move on and we'll
let's
move on.
circle back to that.
We can also talk about this at the next meeting, I mean, we don't have to.
You certainly can, you
Yeah.
don't have to make a decision right off. Yep. Tammy will tell you that you need to know if you keep it for more than 60 days, it needs to be added to our insurance. So,
How long have we had it?
a week.
Okay, we got plenty of time.
Okay. Oak Street. I think you all know what I'm talking about when I say a property on Oak Street.
Another trailer,
What's that?
another trailer.
Right, so right over here, we have a trailer that was sold from Ashley Churchill to a young lady named Brittany Roseberry. And she sold it for $500 2 years ago. There are 2 years of outstanding taxes totaling about $300 altogether. Unfortunately, this young lady, Miss Roseberry, when I was over there, I don't know if anybody's living there at this time. There's a lot of snow piled up on the cars and on the steps, and so it doesn't seem to be anybody going in and out. She owes a significant amount of money to the water district and a lot of money to MEW. And she owes Nate Weston, who is the one that charges the rent for that property. So this is the same type of situation on a much smaller scale, and we have done this in the past. Nate Weston is willing to pay all the back taxes if he can have the trailer quickly deeded into his name, and then he's able to clean up all the other issues. So that's a possibility for the board. Is that one
Take action on
more
that?
more amenable, or? I really don't want to try to sell a trailer in on Oak Street.
So for $320, he'll take ownership of the trailer.
Right.
And the land.
Well, he already owns
Right,
the land.
okay. Oh, he owns that.
Including,
And he's gonna clean this mess up?
Well, this one's not too messy. I mean, it's an old trailer. It's probably not worth more than a couple $100. But this allows him to be able to try to get some of his money back from this person that owes him lot rent.
so can we get a motion to do that?
I just got a question first.
So,
Does this take care of like whatever's owed to sanitary and water and MEW?
No, unfortunately, it doesn't, and there's not enough value in that trailer to do so. So even if we went in there and tried to spruce it up a little bit and put it up for sale or took auction bids on it, you're not gonna get what the water district is owed, which is $900.
How much?
900. MEW is owed 3,500. So,
Yeah, on the roads.
right. So unfortunately, this is not a $5,000 trailer.
so it's possible to get that hooked back up to water and power. I mean, how they're gonna,
That will
getting
be,
it.
that will be Nate's issue once he owns the trailer. Okay.
I'll make a motion, I'll get a hold of that.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second to sell.
You're gonna quit claim deed it back to him
I'm
based
sorry.
on his paying all the taxes.
To Nate Weston, account number 2339, $320. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. And we'll have that at the next meeting. Oh, okay.
Just in case.
Just in case.
Just in case.
All right.
Last one's the easiest one. The Pratchlers out at 1636 Lakewood Road. There's been some illness in the family. I will mention, not to throw the post office under the bus, but all of these people, we had their mail, the mail that we sent to notify them was all returned unclaimed by the post office. And it's certified mail, so they're trying to knock on somebody's door and get somebody to sign. And all of these came back unclaimed, and it's just the nature of the beast right now. But these folks, I have been in contact with them. They're going to make payments. They have family members that are going to help them out. So this one should be resolved early March. So that one we're going to take care of. So
All right, so we're looking at number 3.
right. So
You're gonna look into more than in that, and number 4 then, what we're looking at.
so number 4, you've already quit claim deed. Number 5, the Pratchlers, we're going to take payments from them. We're going to take payments from number 1, James Moore. I got to look further into Ernest Brown over at 15 Hidden Acres Drive. And then maybe you want to think about Cindy Young's situation over there on Lakewood Road and decide what to do. And maybe between now and the next meeting, Mr. Savage and I can have a chance to go over there and take a look at it. And kind of
Probably, I just,
give you a
I mean,
report.
we have 2 people with them, and we have Randy Bruce who wants this, and probably both of them will do a very good job with it, but I just wanna make sure if we're gonna go this way and pick one, then we do it through a way that's fair,
Yep.
and not just picking them for whatever reason. I mean, whatever reason we pick. I mean, I think we need to be fair with this, because we have gotten in trouble with this before. And I don't know if it's worth the time to auction stuff.
Especially if you only have one property.
Right.
So,
Right, we just need to be fair in how we're gonna determine who's gonna get it.
so you got a question from Zoom? Yeah, go ahead, Robin.
I have more information on Hidden Acres if you wanna,
Yep.
it's,
I'll follow up with you.
yeah, because it's quite lengthy actually, so I don't think you wanna get into it in the meeting.
Okay, I'll follow up with you, thanks.
All right, so we'll get some more information on both of those, the 3164 and 112 accounts.
Yep.
And we're moving forward. Sorry about those folks, we did pretty good.
No, last year I brought 10 houses to you, so this year we're going 5, so that's good.
Okay, so we are selectmen's concern. Mr. Agopian?
None.
Mr. Moody?
I'm sure.
Mrs. Webb? Mr. Savage? None? Citizens' concerns. Citizens' concerns and citizens' concerns. Seeing none, looking for motion to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to 1 MRS 4056A, town manager performance review. A motion and a second to go into executive session under 1 MRSA 4056A. All those in favor? All in favor, they're all going to executive session at 7:35.